Hello and welcome to the Ask the Industry podcast, episode 79. For those of you new to the show, I'm comedian Simon Caine, and this is the podcast where I interview the most influential people from the worlds of stand-up, comedy, radio, and today, the live circuit. Vladimir McTavish, also known as Paul Snedden, is a comedian who has been performing for the better part of 30 years. He has a stake in the Stand Comedy Club, and we got him on to talk about what it means for the chain to have 4 comedians sitting on their board of directors, as well as the history of the national circuit and his involvement in the Newcastle Comedy Festival. Listening back to this, it was very much in line with the original idea for the podcast. I originally wanted it to be 2 professionals chatting about the industry in an open, honest and frank way, with no bullshit, just like we all do in car journeys all the time. But I wanted industry involved in those chats as well. So if you're about to go for a long drive to a gig on your own, or you're a fan of comedy who just fancies being a fly on the wall in a casual chat between 2 comics about the highs and lows of the past 25 years on the circuit from their very different perspectives, you're in the right place, and I think you're in for a treat. I'm really happy with this one. Very quickly, I just wanted to tell you about some dates that I'm performing live. So if you wanted to come down and support me in real life, that's a way of doing it. And you can also drop a donation in the bucket if it's a bucketed show, or just slip it into my hand if you don't want to put it into the bucket and want to have 2 separate transactions for the content that I provided either online or in real life. God, that sounded clinical. I'm sorry. The dates you should be interested in for this month are the 11th, 18th and 25th, basically the next 3 Thursdays in May. I'm doing the Brighton Fringe, but I'm also doing the Friday, the 26th in Brighton, at the Carolina Brunswick. All the Thursday shows start at 7:30pm, the Friday show starts at 6:15pm, and all the details are on my website. So if you have a look in the show notes, you should be able to see it there, or you can go to simoncaine.co.uk/laughter is the best placebo. If you're not down on the coast and you're more up in the sort of Midlandsy region, I'm also doing a work in progress in Derby at the Derby Fringe on Saturday the 13th of May. Again, all the details are on my website, but it's at 7pm and you can just reserve your ticket or whatever on the website. So please come, please support me there. That would be invaluable and just amazingly helpful. And it's also bloody lovely to meet people from the podcast. So please do come down and support me if you can. Before I hit play, I just want to say that if you're new here, please do remember to hit that subscribe button. If you're old here, please do remember to leave us an honest review in iTunes, as long as it's not 1 star. But now, without any more delays, this is Vladimir McTavish.
My name's Paul Snedden. I work under the stage name of Vladimir McTavish. Now, there's actually quite a good reason for that in terms of when I started out in the business. I actually started out being a promoter and a comedian and didn't want to use the same name for both.
A surprising number of promoters don't want to be not tarred with the brush, but called a promoter over a comedian.
Yeah, it was partly that, but also I didn't really particularly want to use my status as a promoter in order to get any kind of unfair advantage in terms of, you know, where I was in the business, whatever. I'd been going for a couple of years when I became one of the directors of Newcastle Comedy Festival in the early 90s. For a short period of time, that was like the biggest comedy festival in the UK outside of Edinburgh. It just seemed wrong to kind of capitalise on that by trying to get any kind of unfair advantage in the business.
So you would be a promoter as Paul?
Yes.
So in this capacity, I'm calling you Paul?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Well, I tell you what, I've got questions about the circuit.
Yeah.
So we'll work out what's the best thing to name you.
Sure.
Later on in that.
Yeah.
And at the moment, what is your role specifically with the Stand and in the wider world of comedy?
I'm predominantly a jobbing stand-up comedian and have been for best part 25 years. I have over the years done quite a lot of promoting, but really haven't been particularly hands-on since around about 2000, where I really have concentrated on my live work. My role in the Stand is that of a non-executive director. There's a number of us on the board of directors. There's myself, Miles Jupp, Fred Macaulay, Frankie Boyle, and Tommy Shepherd, who obviously is now MP for Edinburgh East, but was the guy who set the whole club up in the first place, and 2 of the full-time staff here at the venue. So myself, Fred, Frankie and Miles, really, our role is solely going to 4 meetings a year, pretty much.
Okay.
And Frankie never goes to any of them.
Right, okay.
We once had a meeting in Frankie's house, and he went to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he doesn't turn up to that one.
But he left before the end.
Did he really?
Yeah.
For a gig?
No, he had to pick his kids up at school.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Sort of reason. Unless did it overrun, or did he plan it so that he didn't have to hang around?
I think it probably overran.
Fair enough. Okay. Okay, and what exactly is a non-executive board member for someone? Because for me, that's a really vague title.
Yes, it is quite a vague title, isn't it? And it's something that MPs always tend to land themselves in, non-executive directorships. Basically, it means you do very little. I'm glad to have you on. Right, yeah, you do very little. Basically, the non-executive directors of Salt and Sauce Promotions, which is the company that owns the stand, they basically are the people who are shareholders in the company. I used to be a shareholder in the Hyena Comedy Club in Newcastle, which grew out of the Comedy Festival in Newcastle. I was a director of that up until the whole business got taken over by one of the other directors, and quite an aggressive takeover that kind of divided all the people that were involved in the company at the time. When he bought us out quite aggressively, I'd always kind of at the back of my mind wanted to keep that money to reinvest in comedy in Newcastle. So when the stand had plans to open in Newcastle, I approached Tommy at the time and said, look, I'd actually quite like to use this money that I got from selling the shares in Hyena to help develop a good comedy club in Newcastle. And that was when he said the best way to do that is to buy shares in the whole company, and that would make you director of the company. Because my connection to Newcastle goes way back to when I first actually started out in the business in the early 90s, because that's where I first started doing stand-up.
And okay, let's do it this way around. What was that's where you started doing stand-up. So what was the Newcastle scene like when you started?
There was one gig.
What level of gig was that?
There was one gig in the bar of the Caine Theatre, which is an old Victorian opera house. It was actually, the gig was started by Dave Johns. Now, Dave Johns has recently had a lot of plaudits for his role in that Ken Loach film, I, Daniel Blake. Dave started this gig called the Comedy Cafe in the bistro of the Caine Theatre, and that ran for a number of years. Dave and myself, we were the people who first got together to start the Newcastle Comedy Festival, which was in 1993. Myself and John Fothergill and Gavin Webster and a young bloke called Ross Noble used to run this monthly gig in a little pub in the East End of the city, and it was about 40-50 seat room, little upstairs room in a pub, but it was great fun, and that's where a lot of us cut our teeth in this kind of monthly show we did there. One of the guys that did that gig was a guy called Tony Mendoza, who about 10 years ago, very tragic course of series of events, Tony ended up committing suicide 10 years ago. We had a benefit to raise money for his kids, and we decided the best thing to do was to go back to the Cumberland Arms and have all the old crew who used to do this monthly gig there, including Ross. Ross was actually still living in Australia at the time, but it was back, I think it was in between Edinburgh and his tour, and he did the gig. We didn't put him on the posters, but word of mouth was that Ross was doing the gig, and it sold out in 10 minutes. You could only get tickets at the pub, and it sold out in 10 minutes on a Monday morning.
That's amazing. That's similar. Well, that's what we were talking about before we started talking about. If you want to see a performer, you'll make the effort to go and see them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And outside of that, it's very hard to kind of find that audience that all kind of want to come see you.
Yeah, I think. Apart from the odd club that people will go to, and the Stands is one of them, I think it's very difficult nowadays to sell just comedy clubs, to sell comedy without people knowing any name of people who are on, if you know what I mean.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It used to be quite easy to sell a comedy night because...
Define easy.
Well, used to be that if you put a comedy night on, the idea of a comedy night would be enough to get an audience in. But I think now audiences, because they see so much live comedy on television, they're a lot more discerning about what they go to see.
And I'd argue economic factors like the generation that were going to just go and see it now probably have kids, which means they can't get out as much, and they've got other bills to pay. Absolutely,
there is that too. What will happen is, unless you get a new generation in, then certain gigs will wither.
That's the big question.
Yeah.
How would you do that? How is the Stand able to not compete in that way then?
Well, what Kenny, who's the area manager for the Stand, what he always says is that the Red Raw, which is the Monday night show that you're doing tonight, that runs on a Monday here in Edinburgh, runs on a Tuesday in Glasgow and a Wednesday in Newcastle, that is by and large very much the student audience. And what he tends to find, is that people who stay on after they graduate and choose to live in Edinburgh or Newcastle or Glasgow once they finish the course, the hope is that they will, when they've got a bit more money, come to the more expensive shows. But there must be, in every city in the country, there's a huge generation moving on and going elsewhere, and obviously you will lose them. That's a negative side. I think a very positive thing is the generational aspect of people who are going to comedy on stag and hen nights. I think, and maybe this is being ludicrously wishful thinking, I think the bottom might have fallen out of that market.
You reckon?
You seem to see less and less stag do's, and I think if you think about it, it's quite a brief window in your life when you're going to stag do's.
Yeah, I've seen less in some clubs, but more in others.
I think you might be right in that it could be that there are just certain clubs now catering solely for stags and hens.
But there's also, I don't want to say it like this, but there's no repeat business there,
No,
really.
no, exactly.
Because if, for example, if I wanted to get married one day and I had a stag party at a comedy club, it's unlikely my friends are going to go, oh, that was a great night out, let's do it again.
Exactly.
We'd go, let's do something else this time.
Exactly. Yeah, if I'd been on a stag do at comedy night and I'd never been to live comedy again, I definitely wouldn't go.
It seems like there's a specific mark.
Yeah, I know. It's almost like, but also the idea of going to comedy on a stag night, I don't see. I think it's not a great stag night, and it's definitely not a great way to watch a comedy show.
No, I think when you go into a comedy show, you need a certain mindset, or you need to be in a certain mood to do it. I know I need to be as much as possible in a certain mood in order to do it at my best. Like I said to you before, when I did that Glasgow tour date, when I literally got off the train and ran to the venue, and I was meant to start a minute after I arrived or something. That's not the best headspace to be in.
No.
I mean, I would have done it and it would have been fine, but it's not the best. I would like 20 minutes beforehand just to sit or something and like get my head into the play.
I once did a gig in South Wales. It's the day of a rail strike.
Good start.
It was always a good start. It was a Friday afternoon. I still live in Newcastle. I drove all the way down there, and then to make matters worse, not only was it a rail strike on a Friday afternoon, the last hour of it was in torrential rain. It was up the Swansea Valley. So when I turned off the M4 to go up the valley, Pontardawe it was, and when I turned off the M4, one of my windscreen wipers stopped working.
Okay.
And I got there 5 minutes before I was due on stage. Actually had a blindingly good gig. Because I think sometimes when you get that kind of adrenaline about oh God, you're panicking about how to get there, that just gets you through the gig. But the obvious sting in the tail of this one, or it's not obvious, but it's what happened, is I didn't get paid. It was these guys who briefly were promoting comedy in Swansea, and I remember this. Now, when would this have been? It was mid-90s, and I remember at Edinburgh that year, people were looking for them. Lots of comedians were looking for these guys.
Amazing.
Because they owed money to loads and loads of people.
I don't know if you're in this group, but on Facebook there's a group called something like Unpaid Comedians.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're sort of lumping together using digital to if, for example, a promoter hasn't paid, to take them to equity, essentially, or to task them somewhere. That group is picking up, and I don't know whether it's because more people are joining it, so there's more conversation, or whether it's more people are joining it because they're not being paid.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. I think, obviously, the whole business of jongleurs and the whole business of so many people being owed so much money by jongleurs, I think made public the whole fact that for years there have been people who have been, slow or deliberately slow or just actually deliberately trying to get out of paying people. That's always, ever since I came into the business, there have been people like that. I think what was the difference with jongleurs was that suddenly this was the largest chain of comedy clubs in the country were now not paying people. And that made everyone in the industry acutely aware of the fact that this was going on. Also, the number of comedians who were suddenly all involved, either complaining or litigation or whatever, against the same company brought a lot of people together. And also the fact that this social media makes people much easier for people to connect with one another. I mean, it used to be in the old days, it would be when you're on a car journey to a gig and you'd say, oh God, that bloke's not paid. What? He's not paid you either.
Yeah, to me it's kind of odd that they're even getting comedians in, because I understand if you gigged once for them and then were ignorant to the fact they weren't paid. But after a certain period of time, like you said, if we got into a car that's 2 people, there's 2 other people in the car, those 2 people tell 4 people, eventually, especially with social media, you'd think people would stop gigging for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a friend who worked there, who was not a comedian, they just worked at the thing, who told me that they were getting phone calls from comedians to try and get gigs there last Christmas, regardless of the fact they'd been posting online earlier on in the month going, they've still not paid me, because they saw 500 quid for a Christmas gig or a grand for a Christmas gig, and they were like, actually I'll go for it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much sympathy I can have then if you've not been paid already.
Yeah.
I mean, would you take a gig from a promoter that hasn't already paid you? I mean,
no, exactly. And there's a promoter in Leeds, I won't mention him because apparently he's now got his act together and is paying people regularly, who still owes me 400 quid. Now, he actually owed me 400 quid for 2 gigs. I then went to do 3 gigs for him. He paid me the 400 quid he owed me before the first one on a Thursday. Paid me 200 for that. But then the Friday, Saturday of that weekend, I've still never been paid for.
Amazing.
So it was this kind of I guess, I mean, from what that experience tells me, is that maybe if I gig for him again, he paid me that £400 he owes me.
Maybe he's always catching up on the last payment.
Yeah, but I just thought, nah, you know what? It's also when you travel that distance to not get... well, see, that weekend was okay because I came away with 600 quid, but 400 quid of that was 400 quid I'd been owed for a year previously. But it is that whole thing when you do a journey like that, all the way down to South Wales, on one windscreen wiper, and then don't get paid. That's the thing, actually. That gig cost me a hell of a lot more money than most gigs, because not only did I have to pay for all the petrol to drive from Newcastle to South Wales, I had to buy a wiper blade or get my wiper repaired.
But that would inevitably have probably happened anyway.
That would have happened anyway, but these things tend to happen together.
Yeah, I know what you mean. If you hadn't driven the car as much, would it have broken down as quickly? You know, there's all kinds of mitigating factors. And I think what I find most interesting is when I talk to... So if I talk to someone who's an audience member about someone who's ludicrously famous, who's like selling out an arena, they always say something like, oh, they've earned it, they've gone so hard, they've done all this kind of stuff, and they're all kind of very appreciative of it. And then if I tell a friend, for example, I got paid 120 quid for a 20-minute spot at somewhere in London or whatever, they go, you got paid 120 quid for 20 minutes worth of work? And they don't factor in, well, that took me 2 hours to get to and 2 hours to get back, and obviously costs to get there as well as my own time and the time to write the material. Well,
yeah, it's the time, yeah, because that's what a lot of people don't see, isn't it? Is the writing time. And I don't know about you, but I do this a lot. I do a lot of unpaid gigs trying out new stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, here at Red Raw, often we'll try out new stuff in an unpaid spot, or there's a few new material nights at other gigs around, and I'll do them just to test stuff out. And so, yeah, if you factor in all that time, it's... Yeah,
I'm still not break-even point, but I'm wondering whether that's because I'm still booking myself into, the odd unpaid thing here and there. I mean, I'd probably do 2 of them a week.
Oh, do you do that many?
Well, I'd probably do 3 maybe if I didn't have any other paid or progression work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But 2 I think is a good amount if I'm doing 4 of something else.
Yeah, and it's quite handy to have that stage time and keep yourself sharp, isn't it? Even if you're not trying new stuff. But I always think that the more new stuff you try, the more you enjoy the job. That's the thing, isn't it? That I always love the autumn because I like the fact that stuff you've written for an hour in Edinburgh as part of your hour-long solo show, you can actually make work in club sets. I often go to try-out nights just to try stuff that I've actually done for 3 weeks, but I've done it for 3 weeks within the context of an hour-long show to see if it works within the context of, say, like a 10-minute set that you're doing at a try-out night. And if it works in a 10-minute set, it's going to work in a 20-minute set.
Yeah, it's like taking out the chunk to make sure, because I find that, especially with my first hour, there's 2 bits of it that only ever work in the hour.
Yeah.
And that's not a problem because I was only doing those bits in the hour. But I did try them in clubs, and every time I was like, why doesn't it?
Yeah, I know.
But I think it's partly because one of them is about 25 minutes into it, and so it has this cushion of they know me for 25 minutes.
Absolutely.
Which they don't have in a club where they'll only know me for 10 or 11 until I do that.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you're on a date with someone, for example, if you talk to them for 3 hours, you might be a little bit more amenable to something they say than if you were 5 minutes in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well been there.
All right, tell us about your date with an neo-Nazi.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. I've done gigs where when you've worked out, 1, costs of getting there, and 2, the time it's taken, you think, hang on, this is actually less than the minimum wage.
Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit recently because it sounds like a bigger amount of money than it is when you get the thing. If I said I'll pay you 20 quid to come do the stand and you weren't associated with it, it's down the road from you, of course you're going to do it. But if I said, I'll pay you 20 quid to come do the equivalent of the stand in Leeds, that's going to work out to negative money for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you still, but I mean, I would still do it most of the time if I thought it was going to lead to something.
It's one of these things, yeah, or if you think if it's convenient to get to, or if it's on the way to somewhere else, that's the other thing as well, isn't it? That going all the way down to Leeds from here for one night, you think, that's bloody pointless. Whereas if you were on your way to Sheffield or London or anywhere, you might squeeze in a not particularly well-paid gig if you had a night off on your way to somewhere else.
Yeah, to try and make the money work.
But I know, the things comedians do that you think, because we're self-employed, we will do stuff that if this was a job that somebody paid you to do and employed you, you wouldn't put up with it.
No.
Likewise, I find myself doing things that, as a promoter, having been a promoter in the past, I find myself saying yes to things that I would never have dreamed of offering to anybody else. Because nah, they wouldn't do that. I find myself saying yes to stuff. They think, why did I say yes to that?
I know what you mean. It's kind of odd, like if someone says to you, can you just give us a bit of a hand? But I think that comes down to the industry's so small that I think a lot of people do stuff for, not the wrong reasons, but they just think, what if I need them at some point?
I know what you mean, yeah. Uh-huh.
But I see that happening increasingly often where people will be, like you said, I mean, nicer to you potentially if they knew Paul and Vladimir were the same person.
Yeah.
And book you for more stuff. It was like when I first started out, I didn't tell anyone I could drive for like the first 2 or 3 years because I didn't want to get a gig as the driver.
Good call.
But then I met up with a few promoters because I do a Christmas party every year, which I'm doing it this year if you want to come. But anyway, I do a Christmas party every year and they'd come to that and they drunkenly said to me, why didn't you say you could drive? I would have booked you. And I went, because I don't want you doing that. And they went, no, it's just because I couldn't find a driver. It's not because I wouldn't have booked you because of that.
Yes.
And it's like, when can I ask you that? When can I openly say to you, hey, are you booking me because I can drive? Because I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, I know what you mean. One thing that gets me is promoters who decide you're driving.
Yes, they sort of say, you're on. Oh, by the way, there's 3 people coming from the same city.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, all right.
I was going to get the train.
Quite like 2 of them.
Yeah, I've had that before. Where this, I won't mention who it was, but it's this person who. You ever meet a comedian who's always on, like just the whole drive wants to be the funniest.
Oh God, bloody exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I literally said to the promoter, I was like, I don't want to drive them. They're gonna kill me. The whole It was like a 3-hour drive, and I if it was an hour, I might have thought about it, but 3 hours of someone trying material in your ear.
Oh, utterly appalling. I did some gigs a couple of years ago for the Gilded Balloon. Gilded Balloon, as well as doing all the shows they do during the Fringe, have a fairly restricted comedy circuit in Scotland of shows they promote. It's got a bit bigger now, but 2 years ago it was just a gig in Dundee and a gig in Inverness. What they do though is they put on a driver who drives everybody home.
As in a performer or just a driver?
No, it's
like
it's usually show manager.
Oh, cool.
Who tours with the show and drives everybody.
Really good.
It's great. But the trouble is, it's all well and good. It's all well and good if you're all going back to the same city. And it's all well and good if one person doesn't talk endlessly about this one woman show she's written. And this Scottish comedian who will remain nameless had written a one-woman show about mice, which itself is quite a fascinating subject.
Yeah.
And she talked endlessly on the 4-hour journey, including coming back from Inverness via Glasgow. Ask any listeners of this podcast to just look at a map of Scotland and see how much further Inverness to Glasgow to Edinburgh would be. That was a long journey.
I'm aware of that journey because when I did the tour, I booked Glasgow and Edinburgh, and then in Edinburgh it was, where was it? It was by the coast area, and then I was looking around that bit because there's a touring company, I can't remember what they're called, who do, so like will take your show around different theatres up here.
Oh right.
I can't remember what they're called. I found them at the Fringe Central. They were like scouting for people, and they sent me the details. But I was looking at it, and I was like, this looks fine. But then I was like, I'm zoomed quite far out. Yeah. This is not as succinct as I was hoping it to be. I mean, talking of the Gilded Balloon, I had Karen Corrin on this, and in it, I had her on it, and she told me that she doesn't think that if you were a performer only gigging, as in only earning your money from performing in Scotland anywhere, you would not be able to find enough gigs to do that as a professional.
It's almost doable now, I think. It has changed a lot in the time that I've lived here. When I first moved back to Scotland, it was around about the time that the Stand opened. Because after I'm just trying to think about the timescale to this. I lived in London for 5 years in between setting up Newcastle Comedy Festival, although quite a lot of that time I was still hands-on with Newcastle Comedy Festival, even though it was based in London. And during that time I hardly ever gigged in Scotland. And I would take gigs in Scotland that weren't that well paid just because I wanted to come home to see family. And really, when the Stand opened, that really did kickstart the whole business here north of the border. I think it gave a number of small promoters the confidence to set up the gigs, seeing that there was an audience there. But we're talking about best part of 20 years now. Now in Edinburgh, there's now 2 permanent dedicated comedy venues in Edinburgh. There's 2 in Glasgow. There's soon going to be a dedicated 7 days a week comedy venue in Aberdeen. But yeah, we're talking about it's taken 20 years to get to that stage, plus various other bits and pieces. I think if you're to solely concentrate on doing comedy clubs, then I think Karen's probably right. you probably couldn't quite make a living out of it. However, there's quite a lot of other comedy things, when you factor in things like corporates, sports and social clubs, various things like that. I probably now work about 3/4 of my gigs are in Scotland. Whereas when I first moved up here, we were looking at 10% to a quarter. And over that period, gradually, that percentage has got higher. Now, I think there's two reasons for that. Firstly, because I've been here for longer, I've got more contacts here. But secondly, I do think there's a hell of a lot more work around than there was a few years ago.
It will always sort of grow. But I find it interesting that comedians kind of have to move to where the work is rather than the work moving to where the comedians are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, we'll do a lot more than...
When I first started out, though, it pretty much was essential to live in London.
Yeah, I find that... Here's the thing. I lived just on the outskirts of London for my entire life. And I've only just moved out, and now I'm somewhere, like, sort of out in Luton Way, which is kind of further out than London than I can even validate to say it's London. The industry everyone thinks of as centric to London. I mean, when I went to Dublin, there was a few comedians who kept saying, I'm going to move over there soon, can you help me out with gigs? What's it like in London? I bet it's amazing. There are more gigs per capita than a lot of other cities. That doesn't mean there's a lot of progression opportunities, paid opportunities, and I don't mean it to sound like I'm jaded or like I've got some sort of vendetta or anything like that, but their business is on the line a lot of the time, and because there's so many, it's competitive to the point of they have to book people they know will work, and they can't take as many risks on newer acts.
Yeah, that's right.
And I find it kind of odd that London still... I mean, I get that loads of the agents are there and the TV production companies, all that kind of stuff, but I don't understand why London is seen as the place.
That's right, and because also, so many of the gigs aren't that well paid. Some of the really nice gigs aren't that well paid, which is the shame, but you do them because they're nice. But also, there's so many comedians in London.
It's like, I always compare it to going to talk to a girl in a bar.
Yeah.
Like, that's the worst place to talk to her, because 30 other men have spoken to her that night.
Yeah.
Heteronormative example, I get it, but it's the time I would never go and talk to a girl to try and get a number because it's not worth it.
Yeah, because when I first started promoting in Newcastle, I say, there was one gig there. Then I ran a gig in Durham and another one in Newcastle, but there was nothing there. But there were lots of comedians. But I think now, I mean, that thing you were saying about the work being where the comedians are, I think what happens is if there is nowhere to play, people will leave. Although there's a lot more gigs in Scotland than there were before the stand was here, I'm guessing, and I couldn't even give you anywhere like an accurate approximation of how many more comedians there are in Scotland now as opposed to say like 20 years ago. Because in the days when there's only a handful of gigs here, there probably wasn't that many Scottish comedians who were actually based in Scotland. Most of them would be people who were based down south, or if they weren't based down south, were spending almost their entire lives travelling up and down there and back.
Yeah, and wasting their money on the train. In terms of the stand itself then, where would you say it sits in the ecosystem of the circuit, both in terms of, let's ignore Edinburgh for now, but let's talk about the Scottish circuit and scene and the rest of the country?
Where it stands with... You mean within some kind of hierarchical sense? Is that what you're saying, or just...
If that's the way you want to... I was thinking of it more like where its position is in terms of what kind of people it attracts, what kind of people it would appeal to, and also audiences, what kind of people they want to see. Sure.
The audiences vary greatly from venue to venue, because Glasgow stand very much gets a Glaswegian audience. And the odd tourist. But here in Edinburgh, at any given weekend of the year, there's lots of people in city breaks. So people always tend to think that Edinburgh only attracts visitors to comedy shows in August. And obviously it does. But outside of August, the other 11 months of the year, if you're doing a weekend show here at the stand, it can be a really, really wide demographic. Likewise, even in midweek gigs, quite often there's tourists in. Even for things you wouldn't expect there to be tourists at. Usually once or twice a month, there's a benefit show here. And the benefit shows tend to be... what the venue does is they give the charity the venue, but make the onus in selling tickets up to the charity. That works in two levels. I mean, firstly, it means they usually work hard to get an audience in. They don't rely on the stand doing it. Secondly, it takes pressure off the venue to have to, put time and effort and money into selling the show. However, you also get just a whole load of random walk-ups. And so quite often, even in a charity show, which is, predominantly made up of local people who are supporting that charity, you'll get half a dozen people from Lithuania or God knows where, or, and that's the thing, because tourists to Edinburgh come from all over the world. You just can never second guess when they're going to come from. Whereas, let's say Glasgow's a much more of a local audience.
What about Newcastle?
Newcastle, again, like Glasgow, much more of a local audience. Newcastle, certain nights of the week, and I know this, and it's quite funny looking at how the Newcastle stand is kind of repeating things I can remember from when I promoted in Newcastle over 20 years ago. There's certain nights of the week people don't go out to comedy. Sunday nights are
in Newcastle.
Really difficult to get an audience in on a Sunday night.
I chatted to Michael Redmond the other day, and he told me that in Glasgow, because he does the one there, he says it does all right all the time. So it's kind of interesting that city by city it will.
Yeah. I think Michael's show in Glasgow works. I think there's two things. I think because the Glasgow stand is in a fairly residential area. It's very near the university, therefore a Sunday night crowd's probably easier to get in there. Also, secondly, the Sunday night shows in Glasgow are sold on Michael's name. So it's called Michael Redmond Sunday Service. It has a clear identity and very much is Michael's. It is Michael's night with guests. And so quite a lot of the audience have gone just to see Michael. Whereas the Newcastle stand, city centre venue, Newcastle City Centre is dead on a Sunday. On a Sunday night. It's quite busy on Sunday during the day because there's quite a lot of people in pubs watching afternoon football. So because the pubs are full of people in the afternoon watching football, it's probably quite a good thing that they don't come to comedy gigs.
Yeah, football's basically the killer of comedy.
The last thing you'd want is a bunch of Geordies that have been drinking for 5 hours and watching football.
It sounds as much of a dream as a room full of stag pies.
Yeah.
A question I like asking performers, so I'm sort of asking you as Vladimir now, is a lot of performers would call themselves one thing, but their take-home income would be from something else. So, for example, some comedians make more money from writing than performing, but obviously would rather label themselves as a comedian. Some promoters, earn more money from promoting shows, but all that kind of stuff. By the sounds of it, you've got quite a good spread of income rather than just doing... obviously, you're a full-time performer, but you do a lot of other things. And I wonder where your breakdown would correlate to.
Yeah, I think, and again...
How would you label yourself?
I am a performer.
Okay.
I do bits of writing, I still do the odd bit of promotion. I mean, I've been asked to book a comedy show for a festival in Fife in July. I've been asked to book a comedy night for the opening of a cinema in Malacantire. And so I'll take things like that because I think, that sounds quite interesting, quite like the look of that. The idea I'd ever run my own gig again, Nah, couldn't. Although I do run a night during the Fringe, I love it. For the last 4 years, I've run a night at the Scottish Comedy Festival in the Beehive. I do.
Ben Ver's.
Ben Ver's gig, and again, I should have mentioned Ben in all of this. I mean, the development of Scottish comedy. I mean, the work that Ben has put into developing Scottish comedy is immense, and he now has his own venue, the Monkey Barrel, which is a full-time venue in Edinburgh, which
I've got him coming on soon actually, because I was meant to. That's why I was hoping to get here early enough, because it was going to give me a tour of the. Have you been to the new one?
Yeah, I've played it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. I didn't think it was open yet.
No, it's not open yet.
Yeah.
In fact, last weekend he booked Michael Redmond, myself, and the Reverend Obadiah Steppenwolf. He booked 3 headline acts because it was the opening week.
Nice.
And it wasn't. So it's still the same back room. Did he go during the Fringe?
I got booked a couple of times in the Fringe, yeah.
It's the same room it was during the Fringe.
Nice room.
Oh, it's a lovely room, but it's very much a Fringe room.
Oh, yeah.
And still, it feels very much like a Fringe venue. Yeah. And there's no point in them doing any more work on it because the plan is that it's going to be open upstairs, hopefully by Christmas. No, it's going to be great, though. Yeah, so I've been running this night at Ben's Scottish Comedy Festival called Scotland Speak at the Fringe. It's a four act bill, a compare for an hour, and every year I think, God, I love it. I really enjoy doing it. But every year when somebody pulls at the last minute, you thought, what the hell did I get myself into this again? And you just forget. And I think because a lot of other comedians just never stop complaining about promoters. But having been one myself, I can always kind of see their point of view. And there's nothing worse than some guy pulling out at the last minute.
Yeah.
Although that's the great advantage of the Fringe, of promoting a show like that during the Fringe. There's always someone you can get. You just bump into someone in the street, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much the only promoting I do now. So, and the money I make from that is minimal. Yeah, I would say, 80% of my income comes from stand-up.
From gigging, as in?
Yeah, from gigging. Yeah.
And is that all club stuff, or is that, you said you do corporates as well?
Clubs, corporates, sporting dues, festivals, because as well as doing Edinburgh, I go out to Australia most years for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I found it because I spoke to Adam Bloom about this. I think, he was on the night we did.
That's right, that night at Adam and you and Al Cowie and 4 people in the audience.
Yeah. Do you know what I loved about that? So I didn't tell you this before we started. So he bought Adam bought the whole audience a drink. Yeah. He texted me afterwards and said, I told you that bit. Yeah. But then he texted me afterwards and said, you did really well tonight, all that kind of stuff. And then he texted me just a bit, saying how well it went. And then I said, can I use it as a quote? And he went, why would you want to use that as a quote? And I went, it sounds great. And it was something like, one of the only people this year to make me howl with laughter. And I was like, that's a good quote, isn't it? He was like, why would you want to ever use that? I went, because it's funny. I think it's really good. But yeah, it was a weird night. But he told me that when he started doing corporates, he said something like, immediately, he could, if he wanted to, do 10% less gigs every month in exchange for one corporate, because essentially they paid a lot more, but also the amount of research he does for them meant that, because you have to research the company, make some custom jokes, and also turn up early, and usually it's a day worth of your life rather than just an hour. And I had who was it? It's weird the way that this is all coming around full circle, because I had on the guy who runs JLS, the biggest corporate company in the country. He used to manage Michael Redman. Oh yeah. It's amazing how the Scottish circuit has kind of just a whole, I don't know, you can see the links coming together, or at least I can, because I've spoken to enough of you. But in London it feels so dispersed that you don't get the community spirit you get up here. Yes, there is very much a feeling of being a comedy community up here. And somebody was asking me about this recently, about whether, how comedians get on with each other. I think by and large we all pretty much get on okay. Especially at the kind of stratum of being, jobbing club comedians. Obviously there's some people you don't like, and there's always going to be that, but, by and large people get on. Is that what you always wanted to be? You want to be a jobbing comedian? I think I always I never really set my sights any higher than that, really. I came in at this quite late. I've been an actor before I did this, and been in a sketch show, and in fact the sketch show kind of gradually diminished in number. It started out with 6 of us, then there was 4 of us, then we became a double act. And then the guy, who's still my best mate, he's now the literary manager of live theatre in Newcastle. He became a parent and decided he didn't, and he was my writing partner as well as being a double act. We were writing partners, and we wrote plays and things like that together. And he decided he wanted to focus on the writing side of things. So that's when I started doing solo stand-up. Yeah, by not by design, but by... Yeah, by everyone else just fucking off. And I'll tell you what, Simon, although I had years of experience of acting, being in a sketch show, being in a double act, I think the most nervous I've ever been on stage was before that first solo stand-up gig. So God knows how total newcomers must feel. Because I've never been a total newcomer to stand-up, if you know what I mean, in that I had performing and comedy experience before I did solo stand-up, and I still found that nerve-wracking the first time I did it. How old were you? Do you mind me asking? I was in my 30s, early 30s at the time. Which gig was it? It was, here's an example of how stupid, it was a gig I put on myself. Okay. Yeah. Well, the sketch show I was in, we built up, we used to do our own monthly gigs, and we built up quite a hardcore fan base in Newcastle. And so myself and Jess kept on, when we became the double act, we kept on doing a monthly show. And then when he stopped, I thought, well, I'll do a monthly show on my own in the same venue. And it was a Good Friday, and it got a really good audience. So it's bizarre, the first gig I ever did. Then I started doing, and it was shortly after that Dave Johns opened the Comedy Cafe, and I started doing gigs there. I wouldn't have done it that way. No, I know you wouldn't. That's probably why you were so nervous, because they came expecting something else. Yeah. And then you just went on stage, and they were like, "Where's it? Wait, the other one will be along in a minute." Yeah. They're doing like a sketch, he'll be out in a circle or something. That would have made me more nervous. Like, what was your first gig which wasn't your own? Which wasn't my own. Yeah. Were you still nervous at that point? No, nothing like so nervous, because I'd done it once. Okay, so how old? You said you were in your mid-30s when you started going. And were you earning were you full time by that point as a performer, or did it have to change when you became?
I was acting and doing bits of stand-up, and in fact my writing partner and myself, we ran a community theatre company that did theatre for elderly audiences.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, going around residential homes and sheltered housing and hospitals and things like that. And in fact that was great preparation for working in stand-up, because if you've ever played to an audience of predominantly people with dementia, no heckle you ever get in a comedy club is ever going to come close to the nonsense they shout at you.
My nan has dementia, and every time I go and visit her, I compare it to like a game of improv, because she'll just randomly go, get in the car, and I'm like, all right, nan, and then she'll go, grab the vegetables, and I'm like, all right, here's the vegetables. She goes, not that one, and it's like, what am I? Okay, nan, I'll keep going. And she just doesn't, she's not with it, so she doesn't have a clue what she's doing.
Well, imagine performing in front of 30 people like that.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I have enough trouble with, mid-50s crowds. Right, so in terms of the stand, like you said, they've got a board of directors who are pretty much all comedians.
A lot of us are, yeah.
And I think that's unique in the sense that most other clubs are run by a promoter who might be a comedian, but generally speaking they don't have a board above them or working with them that gig at it and have a vested interest in it in terms of their own career, but also of their peers' careers.
I think it does make us pretty much unique. Are
there any others?
I don't know. I think a lot of promoters think their lives would be a lot better if they didn't have to deal with comedians. If they could just find a different way of selling beer.
Some days I feel like that, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, I must admit, I feel like that myself. At the end of certain car journeys, I definitely feel that way. I do think apart from, say, the obvious people we know who are comedian stroke promoters, I don't think there's any company where, the majority of the board of directors has been made up of comedians. I think that this is unique.
But do you think that's what's made the stand such a community-led and revered club, or do you think it was before you guys had even become the board? Because it was already quite an established... Yeah,
I think the attitude that was there that lends itself to having people like myself and Fred and Frankie and Miles on the board, that attitude is the same attitude as wanting to put on a good show in front of intelligent people and valuing the comedians you put on stage. Also, the history of the stand is that it was actually founded by a comedian. Tommy Shepherd's former partner, Jane Mackay, was the original compere here, and that's how Tommy got involved, because his partner was a comedian, and when Tommy was made redundant as Assistant General Secretary of the Scottish Labour Party, that was where he got the money to found the stand.
This is Labour Party money.
Venue. Because Tony Blair wanted Tommy out. Tony Blair paid for this place to be open.
Yeah, so
pretty much.
I don't know how I feel about gigging it now.
Well, no, it's money that it was Tommy's redundancy that funded the whole thing.
What do you think is the biggest problem in the Scottish circuit then?
The biggest problem probably is, and again, these people it's probably best not to name and shame them. There are one or two fairly shambolically amateurish promoters about who. And this is not a peculiarly Scottish thing, it happens all over the country. People who, one, book too many acts, two, don't make sure the acts stick to their time, three, have intervals that go on forever, four, put the gig on because no one else will book them so they run their own gigs, and five, don't really do much to get an audience in, although apparently last week was sold out.
Every
number of times I've turned up and said, should have been here last week. To people like that, I always say, well, tell you what, next time, book me last week.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I go to a supermarket and say, do you have this item? And they go, we had it 2 days ago.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, why are you, I know what you mean by that. You're basically trying to make me feel like I'm going to come back in 2 days.
But that weakness, having said that, there's very, very few gigs like that in Scotland now. There were a lot of them, say 10 years ago.
But there are fewer gigs here than in other cities anyway.
Yeah.
So as a proportion, there's probably a similar number to, say, London.
Yeah.
Who do you think is the most underrated person in the Scottish scene?
The most underrated person in the Scottish scene? My God. You mean as a comedian?
You can interpret it how you like.
Well, you know what? When we were talking about Ben Berth earlier, I think Ben's contribution to Scottish comedy has been immense. From turning what had been a failing upstairs pub room gig into a regular weekend show, from starting, a uniquely dedicated Scottish Fringe venue, which is carrying on next year, despite the fact he's moved out, and then from establishing a second permanent comedy venue in Edinburgh. I think Ben's contribution is hugely underrated.
And if you could give one bit of advice to a comedian starting out, or wanting to get to where you are now in terms of career-wise?
I think the one bit of advice, Kenny from the Stand always says this at the start of the Fringe every year. So there's no rules to doing the Fringe. The only rule there is don't be a dick. And that's what I'd always give the best bit of advice to any young person starting out in comedy. Don't be a cunt.
Don't be a cunt.
Pretty much, isn't it? Just don't be a cunt.
That's going to be a soundbite.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Cheers, Simon.
Thank you. That was Paul. I'd love to thank him and everyone at the Stand for giving us a quiet place to record this episode, and for him being so honest and humble and just telling it like it is about the circuit. It's great to hear his perspective, as he's been around so long and he's viewed the circuit from almost every angle possible, from a performer to a promoter to a booker to a club exec. Just, he knows everyone's perspective, and I totally get his point about not using your power and influence in the industry side of things to get ahead as a performer. I can only imagine that's probably happened a lot, and it'll only bite you on the arse because you'll get a gig for a place that you're not ready to perform at, and then you'll probably blow your chance at getting a spot there later on in your career when you are actually worth putting on. Also, I think every comedian should, at one point in their career, put on a gig. I don't mean a solo show, I mean put on a gig that is a selection of acts. They can perform as well, but just to get the other side of this, because the amount of comedians who bitch and moan about promoters, and you might be entirely right in your moan and bitching. It might be that the promoter is completely wrong and you have every right to moan about what they're doing. But I would argue that you don't have a clue about the pressures that they are under and that they're putting themselves under for the art form and for the circuit as a whole if you've not tried. So next time before you have a bitch, do take a minute and question if you've ever run a gig, and if you haven't, if you're fully aware of how much effort they had to put in on the positive side of what you're about to bitch about. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to see more gigs. I'd love to see more people trying to run gigs, because I think it's worth you getting that perspective. As always, if you're new here, please do hit that subscribe button. If you're old here, please do give us an honest review in iTunes. They really help out the show. Take a minute. While you've got about 30 seconds left of this podcast, that is enough time for you to sign up to iTunes and leave a review. So please do that while I just talk incessantly about some other things that you might want to know about. 5 stars ideally. A lot of work goes into these. Very quickly, I just wanted to tell you about some dates that I'm performing live. So if you wanted to come down and support me in real life, that's a way of doing it. The dates you should be interested in for this month are the 11th, 18th and 25th. Basically the next 3 Thursdays in May, I'm doing the Brighton Fringe, but I'm also doing the Friday, the 26th in Brighton, at the Carolina Brunswick. All the Thursday shows start at 7:30pm, the Friday show starts at 6:15pm, and all the details are on my website. So if you have a look in the show notes, you should be able to see it there, or you can go to simoncaine.co.uk/laughter is the best placebo. If you're not down on the coast and you're more up in the sort of Midlandsy region, I'm also doing a work in progress in Derby at the Derby Fringe on Saturday the 13th of May. Again, all the details are on my website, but it's at 7pm and you can just reserve your ticket or whatever on the website. So please come, please support me there. That would be invaluable and just amazingly helpful. And it's also bloody lovely to meet people from the podcast, so please do come down and support me if you can. Also, if you would like to consider giving me a donation, please do. It helps keep the show going. What value did you get out of this episode? An hour's worth of content behind the scenes of questions that you always wanted to know the answer to but didn't have the chance to ask them, or couldn't find the right time to go and talk to someone like Vladimir about what goes on in his head and what goes on behind the scenes at the Stand. What's that worth to you? £1, £2, £5? Whatever you think it's worth, and whatever you think you can pay and you can donate, because I don't want anyone going into debt for this project except for me, and I don't even want me going into debt for it really, which is why I'm asking. So if you can donate, that'd be great via PayPal on my website, which is simoncaine.co.uk. If you're able to and you want to become a patron, that'd be amazing as well. Basically, that involves you saying, I'm going to give a certain amount per episode for the foreseeable future until I can't do it anymore. You can cap it. I only do 2 episodes a month, but you do it for $1 an episode. So essentially, it'll cost you about £1.80 to give me $1 every episode. It's not a lot, is it? but it would keep us going and it would help out, and I can't thank the patrons enough. They really help me keep going with this, and I'm not at break-even point and I'm not anywhere near it. But if you have the money and you can afford £1, it's just passing the hat around. It's like we do at Edinburgh. I'm just asking for £1 every time I do one of these, if you can afford it, that is. It just helps sustain the thing you value, really. But I won't say any more on that, because by this point you should have left me a review in iTunes. Thank you very much for leaving a review in iTunes. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for donating if you do. I'll see you all in about 15 days time. Bye.